book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I am here today with my April TBR. So my recent reading life has been a little bit bumpy, meaning there have been some moments where I've been able to immerse myself in a really good story, and then there are some moments where life has just been hitting me very hard and I'm not able to immerse myself in what I want to read. And I'm noticing this a lot with my romantasy reading habits. I love reading fantasy romance. Fantasy romance has always kind of been my favorite fantasy subgenre, and that hasn't changed. The problem is, so much is happening in my life, so I cannot fully immerse myself in fantasy romances that have like complex world building and stories. And that devastates me because eventually I want to get there again. But for now, I feel as if I need to settle with some stories that are kind of easier to digest to hopefully eventually get me back into much more complex stories like that. I am hoping that one of these months some good news is going to happen in my personal life, but that is just a complete side note slash tangent. I know it has nothing to do with my channel and it has nothing to do with what I talk about here, but it does affect my reading life, so I am just going to be a little bit transparent about that. It's kind of a big reason why I have not been able to get into too many great dense books in recent days. But I've got quite a palatable TBR here. I mean, yes, I've got like maybe one dense book here, and I got a few comfort reads. I think this month I'm really gonna focus on comfort reads. I've got a lot of manga on this TBR as well. As some of you might know, I've been getting back into manga and I have been watching much more anime, and my most recent anime watching habits have definitely influenced this TBR. I am one stressful event closer to rereading the Bargainer series. I have been edging on this, I swear. Every single time life has gotten stressful recently, I'm like, Laura, where are you? I need you. I've already read that series 3 times, but I feel as if it is a trauma response for me to read the Bargainer series every single time my life has gotten depressing. So don't be surprised if you see the Bargainer series pop up in a wrap-up that is to come very soon. I don't know. I have not personally placed it on this TBR, but I'm just letting you guys know that it is a possibility for the month of April. I guess without further ado, let's get straight into this TBR. I'm going to talk about the books that I plan to read, and I hope that I find comfort in all of these reads. So I'm going to start off with a continuation of a series. Here I have Blue Box Volume 9. I was just so excited to continue on with the series. I binge read volumes 1 to 7 at the very beginning of this year, and then when volume 8 came out, I also read that one immediately. I believe volume 8 came out in January as well, so that was just really exciting for me, getting to be able to immerse myself in Blue Box in January. I love this series so much. This is pretty much a romance sports anime, but we are not necessarily following characters who are playing the same sport. We're pretty much following a protagonist who plays badminton and his love interest who plays basketball. So they're both competitive athletes. He's a novice. She is, I was gonna say professional. She's not a professional athlete, but she is definitely much more advanced, and they hit it off, or at least they try to. Meaning it's a will they, won't they situation. It is a very slow burn situation, and I very much appreciate the tension between the two. I love this romantic tension so much, and yes, spanners are thrown in the works constantly with this couple, but I just love them so much. This series very much gives me the vibes of Slam Dunk and Haiku, but it also very much reminds me of Toradora in the sense that it is a slow burn with the whole will they, won't they situation. There are love interests coming from the other sides as well. However, you know exactly who to ship, and that is Taiki and Chainatsu. This actually looks like a very chunky volume. It looks chunkier than usual. I really hope that this just adds some good layers to the overall story. I am considering reading Bride by Ali Hazelwood. So it's very interesting, right? Myself and a friend who struggled to read Ali Hazelwood's STEMinist backlist were recently having a conversation about whether or not we should read Bride. It was a very interesting conversation, and if you've been following me on my channel recently, you would know I recently read Check and Mate, and I was actually very impressed by that novel. I had very low expectations for it, but turns out it's my favorite Ali Hazelwood novel. My friend, however, has not yet read Check and Mate, so they were uncertain. We were both recently uncertain about Bride because we were like, it might just have the same tropes as the other books that that we've read and we've just been like, oh yeah, not so great. But my friend who did struggle with Ali Hazelwood's STEMinist novels and novellas previously confirmed that they have read Bride and they absolutely adored it. And I've had other friends absolutely adore this book, and I feel as if I'm missing out, so I need to read Bride. I am actually very much looking forward to this story. And in Bride, we are following a vampire and a werewolf and their romance. I'm not too sure if it's forbidden in this world. I haven't heard a negative thing about Bride from any of my friends yet, so that is promising. I cannot wait to read this one and let you guys know how I go with it. I really hope I love it just as much as Check and Mate, but if not, maybe I hope I love it just as much as some of the paranormal romances I've read as of recently that I absolutely adore. And going back to some manga, I would really like to complete the Yakuza Lover series this month. I had no idea that this series was gonna end at volume 12 until recently, and I feel kind of sad about it, but honestly, I don't think that there's any more plot that I would like to explore with these two characters. I think this is kind of the perfect time to say goodbye, even though these two characters have been in my life for the last couple of years. I love them two so much. Yuri and Oya are just absolutely adorable, and yes, this is a high stakes romance situation, but this series is just absolutely wholesome, and I feel as if their relationship got stronger and stronger with every volume. I would honestly want this series to continue for its action, but as of recently, I have discovered more high stakes romance situations out there in manga. Like, you know, I've recently started Yakuza Fiancé, which is definitely not the same as Yakuza Lover. It's actually quite the opposite in terms of premise, but I honestly reckon that right now is the perfect time to immerse myself in a new manga story that's a high stakes situation and maybe explore more from there. But before I do that, I do want to say goodbye to the Yakuza Lover series because I feel as if this series started it all for me. I think this was the first mature manga series I picked up. I could be wrong. I cannot wait to finish the series. I really hope that it ends off on a beautiful note. We will see. I know some readers have said that this series went on for too long, and I totally get that. I totally understand, but I have enjoyed the run so far. I think at volume 10 I realized, yeah, we're in another situation where I feel as if we've been here before, but at least I know that there's an end in sight, so can't wait to get to these. And some more romantic suspense on my TBR. Yeah, I think it's about time I continue to read more by Ana Huang, and I finally get to King of Pride. I think I put this book on a TBR previously, but then I told myself, no, I must complete the Twisted series and I must read the If Love series, and I'm so happy I've caught up on Ana Huang's backlist, especially because I believe that the If Love series ties into this whole Ana Huang universe. However, I do know for sure that the Twisted series does tie into the Kings of Sin world. So I'm really happy that I've caught up on the stories in the background, but that means that I finally need to proceed. I cannot wait to get to King of Pride. I think that Ana Huang is also going to release a new series as well. I only just found that out very recently, but yeah, I've heard great things about King of Pride, and then the third book as well, King of Greed. I loved King of Wrath so much, and I cannot wait to proceed with the series because I just know that it's going to be a good time, because Ana Huang does write a good high stakes relationship from time to time. I'm hoping that I will get that out of King of Pride. I might not get adrenaline out of this book, but I'm hoping that I will get a good romantic time at least, and a good compelling story overall. I'm so excited for this next one. Okay, so I did mention earlier on in this video that my recent anime watching habits have definitely influenced my TBR this month, and the next two manga series that I'm going to mention in this TBR today are two manga series I've recently watched the anime adaptation of, and I have absolutely fallen head over heels for them. But I'm going to start off with this one right here, and that, my friends, is the Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. I've got volume 1 here. I've actually got the whole series on my shelf now. As soon as I watched the first episode, I was like, you know what? I need to collect the series. Like, I need to collect all the volumes, like, immediately. But I stopped myself. I watched it over 6 episodes, or 7, I'm trying to remember. I remember at least getting through, I don't know, a third of the series. I told myself, okay, I need to watch a few episodes until I decide to commit to purchasing 15 volumes. So I did, and I realized, yeah, no, I need to purchase this series. As I am filming this video, I have not even finished the anime. I am 12 episodes into the anime, and it is a 24 episode series. I could finish it, or I could just start reading the manga, but what I do know is that I definitely do want to revisit it, and I think I want to revisit the story for the years to come. This story is just so comforting. Every single time I watch an episode, I have the biggest smile on my face by the end of it. I am just so in love with the story. So if you have not gathered this already, this story was definitely inspired by Beauty and the Beast. However, I would say this is Beauty and the Beast meets A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain, because we have a sacrificial princess who was raised to be a sacrifice to the King of Beasts. Very similar to how the protagonist of A Soul to Keep was also raised to be a sacrifice to the beast in that story, except the difference between the two stories is that in A Soul to Keep, Orpheus is not like the King of Beasts, whereas here we have the King of Beasts, and that kind of relates more to Beauty and the Beast. There's a royal aspect to the story. So if you like A Soul to Keep, and if you like the original Beauty and the Beast story, you would absolutely adore Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, just like me. Like, I honestly adore the story so much. I have not even finished the story, my goodness, but I am obsessed. I love these two so much. I love how optimistic our protagonist is, and I love how much of a cinnamon roll the King of Beasts is. Like, I cannot stop thinking about them and smiling at the same time. They're perfect, they're amazing, and I think that at this time, this series would be absolutely perfect for me to consume. And the next book slash series I decided to put on my TBR is Poison Roses, or the Boys of Belrose series by Jamin Eve and Tate James. I just decided to put this on my TBR because I thought, why not, right? Okay, in all seriousness, I just thought that maybe if I put the Boys of Belrose on my TBR, I might just have a very similar reading experience to the Rebels of Ridgecrest High, a series that I read at the very beginning of this year. That's by Belle Harper, and it was a Why Choose series. This right here is a Why Choose series as well. I've had these beautiful special editions on my shelves for a while. They have not been touched probably since I put them on my shelf for the first time. I got them from Babe. These are Babe 2023 exclusives, and I mean, absolutely stunning. I've wanted to read this series for some time, but I've been putting it off, and I think maybe I've put this series off because I did not necessarily love the first two books in the Madison Kate series by Tate James, but I do want to give Tate James another chance. I do want to read another Why Choose series from them, and also this series is a collaboration with Jamin Eve as well, who I've read previously. I've also read a series by them that I have mixed opinions about. Interesting stuff. I'm curious about this book series, but I've heard great things about it. I'm just hoping that it being like a new Why Choose series to pick up, that it might be something like the Rebels of Ridgecrest High. I really enjoyed my reading experience of the Rebels of Ridgecrest High, and I'm kind of wanting the same adrenaline from a new series, and for some reason the Boys of Belrose is giving me those vibes. So we'll see how I go. I might get to this series this month, I might not, we will see. But if I am feeling like a guilty pleasure, I'm gonna pick the series up. The last manga series that I have to mention on my TBR for this month is also a manga series that I recently watched an anime adaptation for, and I fell in love with it. Like, I gave up on this manga series. I gave up on the first anime adaptation, and I gave up on the second anime adaptation a few years back. And for some odd reason, I thought to myself, you know what? If I'm not going to consume this story in any form anytime soon, I am never gonna do it. One of the anime adaptations for this series has been #1 on my anime list for years, only recently being topped by Frieren, and I've also honestly been enjoying my watch experience of Frieren as well, but I mean, that's another tangent. I could talk about Frieren some other time, and I could do that for hours, but I was thinking, is the series that was #1 now #2, is that really worth #1? I don't know. Everyone keeps on saying it's worth #1. I could not get past the first like 4 episodes in the anime, and then I tried to read the manga, and I did get pretty far in the manga, but honestly I just didn't really care. I think I was reading it and I was kind of skim reading it, not being immersed in it, and I decided to reattempt watching Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. I consumed the series within a week. It has taken over my life. I cannot stop thinking about it. It's my Roman Empire. And so I've decided that even though I want to go back and rewatch the anime so bad, especially in this time when things are like really hard, like I feel as if I really want to rewatch that anime like I want to reread the Bargainers series. I've decided that it's about time I get back into the manga series and I read Fullmetal Alchemist, the manga. And I was thinking maybe I should pick up where I left off originally, but I think I'm gonna get the most out of this reading experience if I start from scratch. And I don't mind this time because I love the story. I have finally consumed the story in one form, and there might just be some things in the manga that are just not in Brotherhood, you know? I did start the original Fullmetal Alchemist around a year before I attempted to watch Brotherhood for the first time, and there were moments that were not in Brotherhood, which is very interesting. I want to see what moments were not covered in Brotherhood or in the first anime. This time I really want to fully immerse myself in Fullmetal Alchemist. I now know why so many booktubers are talking about Fullmetal Alchemist and saying it is definitely one of the best fantasy manga series out there and one of the best fantasy animes out there as well. For the longest time I was thinking, man, like a lot of you haven't read Berserk, like what are you talking about, you know? Like you guys should be focusing on Berserk. And like, don't get me wrong, I appreciate Berserk. Berserk is still high up there for me. It's still like top tier for me, but now I have a newfound appreciation for Fullmetal Alchemist, and I think that this series completely deserves to be platformed. And yes, even though I feel strongly about Frieren being #1 best anime on my anime list, considering Frieren isn't even complete yet, I do reckon that Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood also deserves that #1 spot. I think the entire series definitely deserves that #1 spot. Now I understand what people are talking about. Initially I rated it a 9, but I decided, you know what? This series is perfect. It's a 10. We'll see how I go with my manga reading experience. I hope I love it just as much or maybe even more. The second last book slash series that I have placed on my monthly TBR is the Spider's Mate series, or at least the first book, Snared by Tiffany Roberts. I can never go wrong with reading monster or alien romance at a tough time, especially when Tiffany Roberts writes it, because this writing duo definitely know how to write a very wholesome romance story, but I want to fully immerse myself in a series from them, and I've decided that I want to read this trilogy. I might not get to the full trilogy this month, but I definitely plan to binge read it. I hope to binge read it. I hope to love it just as much as everyone else has. This series, I believe, is their most well-known series. There are other series from them, but I believe they're like companion series. Like I've got the Kraken series on my shelves from them. I also have another space opera that I really want to read from them eventually, but I don't have the physical copies of that book series yet. And there are so many other books that I want to read by Tiffany Roberts, but I do want to invest myself in a romantic journey over a trilogy. So I am really hoping that I will have the opportunity to do that this month. But if I don't get to it this month, I do plan on reading the series in 2024 because I have just heard so many great things about the series. I don't only have the standard editions of these books, I also have the fake rate editions. I could not resist. I think I need this kind of wholesomeness in my life. So I hope this reading experience is wholesome. I hope that I am able to immerse myself in the story and the world building, because I know as of recent times it has been hard for me to do that with very complex stories, but I'm hoping that this series is easy enough for me to sink my teeth into. And last but certainly not least, the final book that I've placed on my monthly TBR is Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. Now this one might be a challenge for me considering that I mentioned earlier that I have been struggling to get into very complex fantasy romance stories. However, considering that I have already read the Nightborn duet, I kind of understand how the world is built, so I don't have to go through too much world building. This is actually a side story within that world, within the Crowns of Nyaxia world, and I'm very much looking forward to reading this because it's by Carissa Broadbent. Carissa Broadbent is definitely one of my favorite authors of all time. Her and Laura Falasa are neck and neck at this point. Like, I am finding it so difficult to decide who is my favorite author out of the two. I love Laura's books because I love how dark they are at times. Like, I love how morally gray Laura's books are, but in terms of Carissa's books, I really love how she builds a world. I love how she writes her characters. She doesn't necessarily have a signature darkness to them, and I appreciate that out of Carissa Broadbent's books, I'm getting something different every time, whereas with Laura's books, I know what to expect because all of her books seem familiar. When reading the Nightborn duet, after reading The War of Lost Hearts, I could not tell that Carissa Broadbent was the author of both of them, but then there were moments, scenes in the Nightborn duet where I realized, yeah, no, that does look familiar. And when I say some scenes, I mean the action scenes. Like when I read some of the action scenes in the Nightborn duet, I was like, yep, those action scenes definitely do remind me of the War of Lost Hearts series. I loved both the series, and Slaying the Vampire Conqueror, I believe I'm gonna love as well. I'm really hoping that this will be one of my favorite books by Carissa Broadbent. I'm hoping that it's a 5-star, but I will still be content if it is a 4-star. I reckon that I'm gonna have a really good time because it is a Carissa Broadbent novel. I just love the way that she writes action, fantasy, romance. She does an excellent job with it, and I reckon that this book is no exception. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the red heart emoji. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzelbooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it into double. Started out with half and I flipped it into double.